Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Procrastinator's Pitstop. And today we do have another amazing guest for you, Mayim Vega of Arukah.com, a holistic life coach. But I will get let her introduce herself and all her amazing qualities in just a moment. Before we dig into that, though, we do have an icebreaker on this show, and your question, Mayim, is which cartoon character do you resonate with the most and why?
I don't know her name, but you know that cartoon, The Incredibles? The
Hmm.
Incredibles?
Yeah.
The wife, the mother, the wife.
Oh, Elastigirl.
Elastigirl. Yeah, that's me. I probably identify with her. When you said that, I'm like, I just visualized her, but I didn't remember her name. And well, I identify with her because she's a strong woman and she takes care of her kids. They're like her top priority, but she's got a lot of skills, so and she puts her children first versus saving the world. And I do prioritize my children, above everything else. Even I feel like even my business and the reason why I started my business or businesses was primarily to take care of my children. So that's how about you? Who would you identify?
So, funny story. I like Elastigirl. I don't relate to her, but I mean, she's my favorite Incredibles character.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I always liked her as a character. She seemed really like strong, and she had a firm hand.
Flexible.
Yeah, flexible. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think I'm very flexible, laid back. So are you, obviously, because I was late to this podcast and you were totally cool about it. So thank you.
I'm a procrastination coach. I mean, and people are often late.
I was not procrastinating though. I got distracted and didn't, I don't know, wasn't paying attention to the time. So that's not the same thing as procrastination, right?
There's a line between procrastination and distraction, but if you're
But
actually,
I wasn't willfully trying to be distracted.
it's true. Okay, let's get into it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Mayim, and your journey and how you got to be where you are today?
Yes. Okay. On my profile on the podcast site that we met through, I write there that I'm a former NASA computer scientist turned holistic healer. So I used to work at the NASA Ames Research Center in Moffett Field, California. We have the biggest wind tunnel there, and I used to be a programmer, and we had an award-winning application where our application actually facilitated experiments for scientists and researchers so that they could test their ideas, their prototypes on virtually on the computer on our network before they actually built a prototype because it was a lot cheaper that way. And it was really fun. It was a research environment, and my office mate, he was in charge of coding for the Mars rover and collecting the data and kind of analyzing it and then sending it off to other scientists. So it was a lot of fun. But then in 2003, I got married and I had my first child. I have seven now, but I had my first child, and I took the standard like 6 months off or whatever for maternity leave. It's not standard, it's actually the maximum. I took the maximum amount of time off that I could for maternity leave. And then NASA had a really great daycare. It was right next to the facility, so I could, stop by for lunch and breastfeed my baby. So it was really great. And then go back to work. But I was thinking, one thing, because I'm on the procrastination channel. NASA was really great. Maybe I just had really laid back supervisors, but we could come in like not any time, but we could come in late. There wasn't like a hard dead, like you have to come in at this time. So I lived in the Bay Area, San Jose, and if I went to work during normal office hours. It would be like an hour or more even to get to work. So I would leave late and get to work like at 10. I'd leave at like 9ish and get to work at 10 a.m. So it was really laid back over there. Then I'd work till 6 or 7. I worked late. I was probably the latest worker there, but no one cared. It was more about like get your work done. We usually met just like for maybe an hour or so in the middle of the day, anyway. So it wasn't a big deal. Anyway, so I had my baby, and I felt like this is not natural. What animal does this? What animal gives birth and then puts their child in care of another fellow animal? None. That there's like there's a group child rearing, and in like herds and packs and stuff like that. And there's penguins, right? Where sometimes the mother and the father, they take turns getting food and watching the baby. So there's that. But this whole like giving your child to a stranger, very communist like, it's not really found in nature, unless they kind of just abandon their child like turtles, they just have a kid and then they just leave them, they're to fend for themselves. There's nothing really, I didn't see anything really in between. So I was like, this is not natural. I don't want to do this anymore. It doesn't feel right. And so I decided to become an entrepreneur. And the easiest thing I could do transitioning from being a computer scientist at NASA was to do digital marketing for high tech companies, because it's just more in demand. And not a lot of people need development for scientific program. So that was the harder to find. It was really, really easy to get marketing contracts, for high tech companies, networking and cybersecurity and whatnot. So I was building my first business, and I had my second child. And then I had a health crisis where I thought I was on my deathbed, and I tried all the normal, over the counter medication. I was having migraines, but they were very intense, and they eventually got to the point where I couldn't run my business anymore. I couldn't take care of my child. I was just kind of bedridden. That's all I could do was stay in bed and like just bear the pain. And so a night when I just couldn't even sleep, I asked my husband to take us, because we had 2 children, and no babysitter in the middle of the night. So we all went to the emergency room, and when I talked to the doctor, she thought, maybe I have a brain tumor. And they ran a bunch of tests on me and asked me a bunch of questions, and I filled out a bunch of forms. And in the end, they said, well, we couldn't really find anything wrong with you. You just have a bad headache. We couldn't find really anything wrong. So here's just some strong painkillers, goodbye. So I was like, wow, that's ridiculous. This is also not natural. So I'm all about like, what's natural? It's not natural to be experiencing this kind of pain if there's nothing wrong with you. Like that doesn't make sense to me at all. And I see myself as extremely logical. It's what computer science is. It's basically logic, a bunch of logic statements put together to create a program that does something. I was like, that's not logical. There's a bug in my system, and I got to debug myself. And so that wasn't the only thing that happened, but that was the last straw. And that led me to basically not trust the modern medical system anymore. And so I studied, I enrolled in certification programs for nutrition and herbalism and holistic health, and eventually holistic life coaching. And I found the root of my problem. But first, I found B12. I found that when I took B12, that they would go away. It was temporary, they'd keep coming back, but every time, if I got them, I would take some B12, and there's another herb, feverfew, and B complex, but the main thing was B12. So when I had a migraine, I took B12, it went away. Then the question was, why? Why am I obviously deficient in B12, right? And so the school that I first enrolled in actually pushed vegetarianism and veganism. So later on, I didn't feel like everything that I learned was adequate from the certification programs that I took. So I kept studying, and I eventually discovered the works of Dr. Weston A. Price. I don't know if you know about him. So he traveled all around the world. Oh, we talked about this, a little bit before, right? Yeah, we traveled all. He traveled all around the world, and he studied different native tribal people, and he found that there were some common threads in the things that they did. And they all hunted primarily. That was their primary source of food. Is they hunted either land animals or fish, mostly land animals, or a combination of both. And they also foraged berries and some vegetables and stuff like that, and some fruit, but not a lot because they were primarily, following the game, following the hunt, and also the occasional honey when they would come across it. So no sugars, nothing processed, everything its natural state. And they would eat very like whole, like if they ate the plant, they would eat the whole plant. If they ate an animal, they would eat the whole animal. And he found that they had excellent health. He was a dentist, and he found that they had excellent dental health, excellent oral health, and no cavities, even though they didn't brush their teeth. And they were free of diseases that, especially the killer diseases that we have in our Western society. And he also saw that that women, when they were in our Western society, when they were the age that they here in the Western world would have already reached menopause and were no longer fertile, he found that in these tribal people, they were still having babies past our normal menopause age. And of course, the men were still hunting; they were still strong and vibrant as well. And so that really impacted me. And I said, okay, it's because I'm trying to be vegetarian and vegan. And so I just realized that I had to incorporate more animal products. And when I did, that's when I was able to stop the supplementation of the B12 and B complex. But then that wasn't, that was one of the contributors, one of the root causes of my issue, my health issue. The second one was basically my business was a great cause of stress. And oftentimes if you're an entrepreneur, your business really is. It's not like, and I was at NASA and I just got a steady paycheck and everything was cool and I didn't have to search for clients all the time. It was government money, right? So it was a lot easier. And so the stress was really what got to me. And I just had to learn to trust in God more and to not worry so much, not work so hard, get normal sleep and all that kind of stuff. And life coaching really came in when I had kind of like I would say my second healing crisis. When again I thought I was on my deathbed. I had a very severe case of hypothyroidism, and it was really holistic life coaching, hiring a coach and studying life coaching that helped me to get out of it. And it was during my 40s, and so it's kind of like a midlife crisis as well, and threatened my marriage, threatened my family life, my health. It was a lot of different things combined, and my business was suffering because of it. And I kind of felt like I was in a slump in my business, like I was procrastinating a lot. Looking back, I realized that what I thought was procrastination was really just my body needing things emotionally, spiritually, these invisible things that I got from life coaching. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about in your show is that, just the idea that not all the time, because I'm sure I know you deal with all sorts of reasons why people procrastinate, but sometimes procrastination can be, a signal for self-care, not just laziness or failure, but you might be able to reframe it as need for self-care, maybe a need for exercise, for therapy, or life coaching, maybe a need for a better diet. Your diet could be preventing your mind in your body from focusing the way it needs to. And sometimes when I feel like I'm procrastinating, I'll try to, use it as a time for reflection. If I catch myself and I know that I'm, procrastinating, I can use it as a time for reflection or maybe thoughtful or creative incubation to process, maybe tasks or ideas, or maybe reevaluate my plans or something like that. And we can also use it as a time for growth and learning and building emotional awareness and maybe even developing time management skills, and things like that. So those are my main thoughts that I really wanted to bring out there, being on a procrastination podcast, as a holistic life coach and a naturopathic herbalist.
Oh, that's definitely quite a journey, and thank you for sharing. So one of the things that you said there about self-reflection and maybe not even knowing it reminds me of a case that I had actually. An individual came to me and they didn't know why they were procrastinating, but it was a little bit weirder because they actually came to me. They came to their first call and they literally 5 minutes before the call ended, like 5, 10 minutes before the call ended, they just boom disappeared. I was like, what? Why? Like, what's going on here? Do you have tech issues? What's going on? They're like, no, no, no. It's just like I always do that. Okay, well,
Always leaves meetings early.
yeah, he always leaves meetings early. Always hung up on friends early. So it was a little bit weird because he originally came to me because he said he couldn't finish, like, it was really bothering because he couldn't finish any, he wasn't able to finish books, he wasn't able to finish projects or anything like that. But what we actually started talking about was more about how he never finished anything.
Finished
And then,
anything, not just.
yeah, well,
Yes.
conversations is one thing, and you're right when when we talked at that thread, like why, like what is it that made you cut off that call? And it took a lot of digging, but eventually it came down to that kind of self-care in the way of like self-worth and like validation, right? So it really came down to they felt that if we completed the conversation we wouldn't have anything to talk about the next time and we wouldn't talk again. It was really strange.
Kind of
um
feelings of insecurity,
yeah,
right?
well, feelings of insecurity and inadequateness, which was interesting because I'd never seen that before, but it was an eye opener because it is true that a big part of procrastination too is like burnout, and burnout is normally a lack of boundaries and a lack of not taking care of yourself, right? So lack of
Yeah,
self.
exactly.
Right. So you mentioned that you were procrastinating a lot in various areas, and the way that you got out of it was sort of did this self sort of investigation, self discovery. What was your routine for that?
Yeah, I do find myself as an entrepreneur procrastinating in different times in my life. And I think it's really important to just figure out, ask yourself, or with a coach, to figure out the why are you procrastinating right now. And when I was going through the midlife crisis, it was definitely because I had to deal with issues, first personal family issues, and that just got in the way of everything. And I couldn't get to my tasks because all I could think about were the personal family issues, and I'd want to work on my business, but the truth is, and a good coach can bring it out of you, and that's what my life coaches did, is that I want to work on my business, but I have this other thing that is pressing. And I'm writing a book on life coaching, and have the infamous wheel of life, the circle of life, where you have to work on different areas of your life to be whole, to be holistic and complete. And it's really like a wheel. I feel like our lives are like a wheel and they are round. And when you have one area of your life, whether it's in the field of health, wealth, relationships, or personal slash spiritual. That's how I group it, health, wealth, relationships, and personal slash spiritual. When you have one area that is lacking, you may want to go a certain direction, but your wheel is like not even like a flat tire. It's not like that. It's more like a wooden wheel or something like that. And you've got a quarter of it like slodged, almost. And it just doesn't roll anymore. It's like kind of rolls on the three sides, and then when it gets to that one side where you're having problems, it just kind of thumps right there and it stops. And that is sometimes what procrastination is. So I don't know if I answered your question or
No, no, you answered it, and you're very right. I mean, a lot of times when someone might go to a coach for one reason, it totally is actually a different reason. I mean, I remember having a client that said that they could never get to work on time, right? And you center in their life, you figure out their energy levels. Their energy levels are really low. Well, how are you sleeping? Oh, I'm not sleeping. Okay, let's fix that. Maybe you can get to work on time. And lo and behold, you fix his sleep routine and he gets to work on. So, it wasn't a issue of, he didn't want to go to work. It wasn't an issue of, really procrastination. It was just he wasn't able to get to sleep.
yeah. And sometimes people don't realize how much the physical affects I'm going to call it spiritual. The physical, I like to define it as things you can see, and then spiritual is things that you can't see. And procrastination would fall into the spiritual, by that definition, because you're dealing with something in your life that you can't see, but you can see the effects of it. And yeah, certainly nutrition, sleep, even lack of exercise the physical can affect the spiritual.
So in your practice, if someone came to you and they said they weren't quite sure, they were just they felt like something was off, how would you identify their sort of
Well, so the primary reason why people come to me is for health coaching, sometimes for marriage coaching as well, but and other reasons. But the primary reason is health coaching, and I have a very thorough form where I ask them, a ton of questions, everything from any kind of physical symptoms that they're experiencing, what kind of medications they're taking, so I can show them if there's any side effects from those medications that can be causing their symptoms or be obstacles to their goals somehow. We talk about diet, we talk about environment, even the chemicals that they're using in their house, and their use of electronics, and if they are separating from the electronics properly at night, both from using it and also where is it, like, because the EMFs can also have an impact if you're sleeping and you're within range of the EMFs from electronics. Also, what kind of relationships they're in, what kind of mindset they have, what kind of outlook they have in life. So it's really a very, truly holistic approach. And yeah, so then, yeah, we just dig into anything that I think could possibly be an issue. And usually it's a fact, it's multiple factors, not just one, just like, you've probably experienced.
No, for sure. I mean, we're just we're human beings and we're walking hot messes half the time. Yeah, I know it's I don't like, I don't like this because this happened to me, but I didn't know that because that also happened that also I don't like. And yeah, it can be like a string of dominoes, and it can be difficult to find that thread for sure sometimes. Um, so I know there's like no silver bullet to like, renewing your energy or kind of detoxing because it's different for everybody. But if somebody kind of wanted to see if it was their diet that was causing them an issue, what are some of the things that they could do right away to see if it made a difference?
Well, I think that when it comes to diet, we would have to dig into like what kind of diet they are eating, first of all, and what kind of exercise they're doing. Because if that doesn't match up, if you're not exercising enough, you shouldn't be eating that many carbs. And also, sensitivity testing. That's another thing that I usually do for my coaching clients is we do food sensitivity testing, but it also tests other things like nutritional imbalances and environmental things that they may be sensitive to. So that's it. But something that everyone can do to improve their energy levels and whatnot, and immune system and everything else is to stop all the junk food and sugars, you know, get clean water, There's a lot of very basic things that no matter what kind of diet your body needs, there's still like everyone's going to benefit from no more McDonald's and Doritos.
So no more of those those Big Macs that had Doritos on them or something. What was that?
That's the worst. Yeah.
No, but in all seriousness, I know that people kind of balk at the whole sugar thing, but and it's really difficult because there's a lot of misinformation out there too. I remember seeing a helpful infographic that showed that a bottle of Coca-Cola had more sugar than like 6 donuts or something. And then, everybody kind of taking away, oh, wait a second.
Should I
All I
eat
get from
six
that is like,
donuts?
I can eat 6 donuts and it's better than
No.
health Cola. So,
Yeah. No, it's better to just stay away from that all. If you want sugar, have some fruit. That's the best. Or honey, honey with your tea. But just because it's refined is the and very addictive, is I think. And for some reason I don't see honey as very addictive, even though it can be a sweet. For me, anyways. I don't know about other people.
well, I mean, considering that honey is just bee vomit, I mean, is vomit addictive?
If you look at it that way, it's a great way to get people off of sweets.
Yeah, no, but yeah, there was another one there too. I mean, the whole diet thing is very. I mean that takes a long time. I mean, there's so many great documentaries about refined sugar and also high fructose corn syrup, actually
Yes.
specifically. And I remember seeing a documentary where they were testing it on mice, and I don't really agree with the experiment. I thought it was kind of cruel, but they basically tossed into like this pool of water, right? It wasn't going to immediately, I guess they weren't going to let it drown, right? But in the middle, they had this little pad that it could climb up onto and get out of the water because it, want to drown. And so they did that with these two mice. And the second mouse, they gave it like I don't know, like the equivalent to what the American diet would have supposedly. And it got into the water after a period of about, it was 6 weeks. It wasn't even that much. And the first mouse got to the pad immediately. The second mouse, they threw it into the water and it sort of paddled around and it looked like it was confused and it was bumping against the wall trying to climb out rather than get onto the.
The second one was the sugar water.
Yeah, the second
The
one was the
confused one was the sugar water. Yeah. It's very telling. Yeah. I mean, a lot of things in excess can be bad for you. And sugar is certainly one of the biggest, I'd say, drugs that we use in the Western world today.
right up there along with caffeine and even yeah, sugar, caffeine, or I forget the last one. I'm sorry. But yeah, no, and it's interesting what can be addictive and what can change how we don't think clearly and it can actually cause like mood swings and also other fun stuff. Is that
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And I definitely feel it, when I have too much sugar, I'll have energy for a while and then I'll be really low. And that's when I'll want to procrastinate or just I can't think clearly. So I just feel like, I don't know, I like feel lacking, you know?
so? I mean, you've had quite an interesting career in talking about nutrition and talking about holistic life coaching and being in NASA and having 2 kids and you've been
I have
all
seven
in.
actually.
Yeah, and 7. Yeah, now yeah, that's. I mean, you've been all over the place. What would you say is kind of your most defining moment when you kind of really felt like this is it? You made it.
Well, actually, I would say that was after my midlife crisis and just after getting through it and just thinking to myself, I do have, greater aspirations for my business and my career. I really want to influence the world with my holistic health and healing message. But I also, like to just dwell on the fact that my biggest goals, the things that are most important to me are, again, like stated in the beginning, are my children, number one, and number two would be my marriage. And those two things, I feel like I have exactly what I want, have beautiful, healthy, well-behaved, success-oriented children that I get along with. That's important too, and that are respectful, you know, and have a good circle of friends and different things like that. And I also have a loving marriage, and I see different, millionaires, billionaires, things like that, who have more money than me, and their business might be more successful than me. They don't have those two things. They don't have good relationships with good kids, or they don't have their bounced around in different relationships. So I'm like, I have what I feel like are the two greatest things that I value in my life. So I think that is the greatest realization. And with that comfort, I think I can, wanting to build my business and wanting to increase my influence and getting my name out there, it becomes more of a fun ride instead of a struggle, realizing that that is like, icing on the cake.
Yeah, many that brings up an interesting question too, is that a lot of people say that you kind of have to have one or the other. You either get that billionaire status and you're isolated and you don't really have those personal connections, or you can still do all right, but you're not going to get to like Jeff Bezos status, if you focus on other things besides that. What do you think about that?
I don't know, but it almost seems to be true, at least with the things that I've seen. It's very rare to see someone with everything. And I think it goes back to that balance, that wheel of life. Usually people are focused on just one or two spokes of that wheel, and not all four. Usually I would say neglect. I think most people take their health for granted, I think. And then when it comes to business and family, usually it seems to me that people are either or. And I've been guilty of that as well. I've been guilty of focusing on my business too much and neglecting my family. I've been there. So I always have to try to reorient myself. And sometimes I'm like too much having fun with my family and not, taking care of my business. So it's like it's very much a balancing act, especially with the 7 children, and I homeschool. So it's very much, every second of my day, I really don't have time to procrastinate. Like if I procrastinate, something will suffer in my life. I don't have a lot of buffer, buffer room in my life. So and balance is always the hardest thing. Going down the middle road, walking that narrow path and staying on it instead of, that's the hardest thing to do in life, no matter what you're talking about, whether it's life or business or just being moderate, not extreme in any side.
And just talking about that balance, I know that you have some pretty big aspirations. Where do you see yourself in the next year?
Here, in the next year, I have three books in the works. It's like kind of simultaneously writing them because I get bored of just sticking to one thing. I've never been diagnosed with ADD, but I feel ADD-ish a lot. It's like I gotta jump to different things, and it's hard for me to complete something, which is why I do rely on coaches to help me get through. So I've got a few books on the way, and I'm just getting my name out there. And I think the main emphasis is on health and also living that holistic life of balance successfully. I think those are my biggest focuses and what I want to try to get out there in the world. Those two methods.
That's some very good aspirations there too, and I'm sure we're looking forward to hearing about those books when they come out. You mentioned something interesting about the ADD and ADHD. I'm not very popular in some circles now, but I've had this discussion numerous times now with different psychologists and people that know way more about brain chemistry than I do. But it just seems to me that our society is almost training you to be ADHD.
Yeah, with the electronics and the short, shorts, Instagram shorts, YouTube shorts, whatever, social media. Yeah. There's this one, I think it's called Coco Melon. It's a show for kids. And my oldest child, he grew up on nature documentaries, and, I would just, when he was really young, we would play like, documentary about dolphins or giraffes or, and he would have that, playing in the background while he was playing with toys. And so when he saw and this was when there wasn't, we didn't have devices where you could conjure up any show you wanted to and discover new shows, a minute later and stop your show midway to look at this more interesting one. It was before all that. And so it was my oldest son that said, "Hey, this Coco Melon show," I think it was Coco Melon. Maybe that's not the right name. He was like, "This is bad. This is bad for the younger kids. You shouldn't let them watch it." I'm like, "Why?" And it's like, I don't know, but it's training them to have very short time spans, attention spans. I was like, "Oh, wow." And he saw that, I guess, because of the contrast of how he kind of grew up, and I think lacks on that. And so we recently actually made it so that we don't let, because we have a ton of computers in our house because we homeschool, but when it comes to recreation, we try to make it the old-fashioned way, where there's only one screen, the one big screen that everyone can watch a show on. And before it was like, "Oh, I want to watch this show and I want to watch this show." And like everyone had to have their own show. And it's like, no, we're going to do it the old fashioned way. Like we grew up, everyone has to watch the same show. And you guys have to take turns. And if you don't like it, too bad. And that just trains them in a lot of ways. It helps them to timeshare and helps them to not be addicted to instant gratification. And the little kids can, enjoy some more interesting topics than just these little kids shows. And uh, also when the whole family can see it, everyone's more mindful of what show they pick. Is this kosher for the whole family, and things like that. So that's something that we've implemented in their family.
Have you ever considered taking it a step further? I mean, just really driving the point home, like just randomly picking that, say, okay, you get to pick the show and then say, oh, sorry, that show's not on. You got to pick one of these three. Just like we had to do back in the day, we had to wait till Saturday morning for cartoons, or we had to Friday night. No, you can't pick a cartoon. You got to wait till Saturday morning for that. If you thought about trying that, really getting them to,
No, but sometimes I'll limit them to a channel. We have Angel and we have Daily Wire, and they're like conservative, clean family shows, and I'll limit them to that, and that kind of gets them mad. Kind of gets them disciplined a little bit, curbs their appetites for,
what, no Ren and Stimpy or
yeah,
Morty.
SpongeBob. I hate SpongeBob.
Oh, what do you got against SpongeBob? What
I don't
SpongeBob has
know.
he's got a lot of good. It's a silly show, but underneath it, it has some life coaching messages in there.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I don't know why. Yeah, I know you're right, but I don't like how it's delivered. I think it's too silly. I don't want my children role playing the way they talk and play. I think that's it. And that's probably just my personal, my personality, I guess. Nothing against SpongeBob as a person, cartoon.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, but that I noticed that they haven't been trying to put things that they've been putting deeper, I don't know, almost inappropriate things in the kids shows now too though. Like I have to really watch the Disney Channel now because
Yeah, Disney.
they came. I mean, I get it. You know, Disney, you're trying to make, and I'm gonna get canceled for this, I'm sure.
They're very progressive.
Yeah, well, that's a word, but I
Well,
think some.
but progressive in ways that we don't want to necessarily expose our children to yet. I mean, they're going to learn all those things eventually, but it doesn't need to happen when they're 4 or 5 or 6.
Exactly. I mean, the world's confusing enough. Like, but yeah, I digress. Anyway, we are coming up close to time here. Was there anything that I didn't ask or that maybe we didn't touch on that maybe we should have?
No, just that, just I would just want to reiterate maybe in the beginning, that perhaps your procrastination is due to something personal in your life, another area of that wheel of life that you may need to work on, family, personal relationships, maybe your spirituality, midlife crisis type stuff, and yeah, to meditate on maybe those things when you are procrastinating instead of procrastinating on, like a silly YouTube video that you don't need or something like that.
Well, some sage advice there. And lastly, before we go, what's the best way that our listeners can reach out to you?
Yeah, I have probably just my main website, www.arukah.com, arukah.com, and I have um, I have different things there, and I'm always changing it up, but that's probably the best way.
Okay, and to all our listeners, we will be having that link in the description, so you don't have to remember that. We'll make it easy for you to find. And thank you once again for tuning in for your dose of information, motivation, inspiration. And, if you can't find that motivation or inspiration for yourself today, maybe go out and be that inspiration or motivation to someone else. And we'll see you again next time.